881-0365. Thank you for listening to the O'Reilly Update. I am Bill O'Reilly. For more news and honest analysis, please go to BillO'Reilly.com. No spin, just facts, and always looking out for you.
This is News Talk STL. KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The U.S. and Russia have agreed to reestablish high-level military-to-military dialogue for the first time in more than 4 years. White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports.
It's seen as a sign of warming relations between the two countries since President Trump took office and sought to end the war in Ukraine. The agreement emerged from a meeting between senior Russian and American military officials in the UAE. Meanwhile, the last remaining nuclear arms pact between Russia and the U.S. expired Thursday. The START treaty dates back more than half a century to the Cold War and set limits on each country's missiles, launchers, and strategic warheads. Greg Clugston, Washington.
The medical journal JAMA Oncology reports cancer patients did not fare as well during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Cancer patients diagnosed during the COVID-19 pandemic had worse short-term survival rates than a similar group before the pandemic, regardless of the stage at diagnosis. COVID-19 forced many to postpone cancer screenings, impacting early detection and treatment. COVID-19 itself was especially dangerous to patients already weakened by cancer. Researchers worked to filter out deaths mainly attributed to the coronavirus so they could see if other factors played a role. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Investigators believe the missing mother of Today's Show host Savannah Guthrie is still out there, but they have not identified any suspects. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos also said Thursday that DNA tests show blood found on Nancy Guthrie's porch is hers. He said, "Right now we believe Nancy is still out there. We want her home." On Wall Street, the Dow down by 592 points. The Nasdaq dropped 363. More at townhall.com.
Attention investors, this affects you. Silver prices are exploding, with silver exceeding $100 a troy ounce for the first time. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000 to get our free gold and silver investment guide. Plus, you'll also receive a free copy of economist Ken Rogoff's book, Our Dollar, Your Problem, when you call now. Here's why it matters. Silver is a high liquidity, tangible, and affordable precious metal investment that serves as an industrial commodity and a store of value. It often outperforms gold during economic upturns. If you have an IRA or 401k, you can act now. Roll over a portion into a tax-advantaged gold and silver IRA backed by physical metals you actually own. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000 and find out how you can get a tax and penalty-free rollover for a portion of your retirement funds for 2026. Results vary. Consult your financial advisor before investing. Call 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. Not as cold tonight. Low down to 31 degrees, and then a warmer day with a high of 47. Partly cloudy skies, a little breezy. Winds at 15 to 20, some gusts to 30 miles an hour, but staying dry and warmer for Friday. Saturday, mostly sunny and a cold one. We have a high of 36 degrees, but it's a split weekend. While it's cold Saturday, it's much warmer Sunday. Mostly sunny Sunday with a high of 53. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
Hey, it's Susie Moore with a reminder that for 20 years, Harpo's Chesterfield has been the heart of West County's fun. With their award-winning patio, voted best in West County, and excellent sports bar atmosphere, Harpo's is your one-stop destination. The mouth-watering menu has made them famous throughout St. Louis. Plus, they've got great drink specials and the friendliest, most energetic staff around. Whether you're dining in or carrying out, Harpo's delivers fun, food, and drinks like no one else. Harpo's Chesterfield. Call 636-537-1970 or visit harposstl.com.
Looking for insurance you can truly trust? Since 1986, Bauer Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses across Missouri and Illinois. Owner Cindy Blanton doesn't just offer one quote. She shops all the top carriers like Progressive, Travelers, Safeco, and more to find you the best rates. Whether it's your home, auto, toys, or business, we've got you covered. Visit us at Mid-Rivers Mall in St. Peters or call 636-812-2001. Bauer Insurance Agency, the company that protects, the name you can trust.
On the next Larry Connors USA.
Today's story behind the story, more on busting the chicken ranch and the man Marvin Zindler.
Larry Connors USA. Now weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
That all of us are made free and equal by the hand of our Creator. A lot of presidents refuse to say that. They refuse to say that. Some refuse. Some major politicians refuse to say the word God. They don't want to say it. I say it. That we are endowed with our sacred rights to life, liberty, and not by government, but by God Almighty Himself.
Well, I know there's a lot of cynics out there when Donald Trump starts talking about faith and God and religion, but it's nice to hear a president refer to such things after the last couple of Democratic presidents we've had who seem to avoid the topic entirely. We'll talk about the National Prayer Breakfast, which occurred today in D.C., and so much more. It is Thursday's edition of the Tim Jones and Chris Arp Show here on February the 5th, 2025, 4:06 in the p.m. Thanks for joining us at 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL. Chris, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, I guess. It's nice to see that this is an administration that embraces concepts and discussions about God and faith and family and religion, and that it's okay to say things like Merry Christmas once again.
It is okay to say that. Every time when December 7th rolls around and we talk about the Pearl Harbor bombing, and President Roosevelt at that time gave an address to the nation over radio, and you hear a lot of mentions of God and faith, and every time I hear that, I think, boy, a president today would never invoke God like that in all of his speeches. It shows you just how far we have gotten away from that. And, the liberals, they tend to forget or don't want to remember that this country was founded by pilgrims leaving England because of religious persecution. This country is founded on Judeo-Christian ethics. That's something that we should not get away from, and I personally believe that's why this country has prospered and has done as well as it has, because the founders had a strong faith in God and instituted that in all of our institutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could not agree with you more. And look, many of the founding fathers and mothers, let's not forget the strong women, lady leaders we had back in the day, like Abigail Adams and so many others, Martha Washington, Betsy Ross. Many of them were not necessarily organized religion people. Isn't it interesting that even hundreds of years ago, people were critical of organized religion, even though it was much, much more of a thing that you basically were expected to do. Now it's basically by your own choice. But they were all deists, right? They were all deists. They all believed in a supreme being of some sort. They all believed in a God. Yeah. And Thomas Jefferson was probably one of the biggest deists among them. He wasn't a big fan of organized religion, but you look at his writings and his lifestyle and his life, and he gave all great glory to God. And, you're so right that the left wants to completely dismantle everything about the foundations of this country. It's not just religion. It's not just a belief in God. It's the rule of law. It's having sovereign, secure borders. It's being a beacon of freedom and liberty. They'd rather talk about, woke buzzwords these days like equity instead of hand up, not hand out. And their party, the Democratic Party, has really fallen far and fast from these things that a lot of Democrats did believe not that long ago.
Exactly. And I don't think it's going too far out on a limb that when you see the social degradation of our nation, especially when it comes to values, that all started in the 60s when we took religion out of society and we took religion out of schools. And I think you can see the correlation there that our society has degraded ever since then. Liberals always talk about separation of church and state. Tim, as an attorney, they had that completely wrong, that it was not to keep religion out of society. It was to keep government out of religion. And the liberals have completely twisted that to try to turn us into a completely secular society, which has been a detriment to the United States, if you ask me.
That's my misplaced preposition complaint. Misplaced preposition. Of and from, right? The left will tell you it's freedom from religion, but that's not what the foundational documents nor any of the writings say. It's freedom of religion. The government shall not do these things. The people are free to do whatever they want as to religion. So you can express your religion as long as you're not stepping on someone else's religious rights.
Yeah, and I think if you look at our Supreme Court building that has religious Christian sayings on it. You go up to Jefferson City, you'll see Christian verses all over
everywhere.
The Capitol. We've got "In God We Trust" on our money. I think that clearly shows that the founders of this nation wanted this country to be a religious country, not necessarily a Christian country. And we've seen over the last 60 years, the Democrats, the liberals, slowly chip that away out of our society.
This is the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Philosophical Theological Podcast.
Praise the Lord.
We should sound like NPR. Welcome to No, but it's I think this is a great discussion to have. And I know you and I have each had these discussions a lot of times on weekends, right? Especially with Dr. Randy Tobler, where weekends you slow down, you take a breath, you think about Sunday a lot, or going to Mass. We always go to Mass Saturday nights. A lot of people go to church on Sundays. And you think about those things, but I think it's good to have them sometimes during the week. We're running around like crazy people all week, and it's nice to step back and go, okay, why are we here? What are we doing here? What is the purpose of life? Is there somebody, something looking down on us, wanting us to be better humans? And I think these are great questions to ask. And you know why the left doesn't want to talk about these things? Because, Chris, they want the government to be our God. Because if the government is our God, then that's what you owe all your allegiances to. That's who you bow and scrape to. That's who you give all your money to. And if there's a higher being, a higher power, well, then that intrudes on their construct that the government should be the top dog in every aspect of our lives.
Exactly. And if you can take religion out of society, you take morality out of society, then it's much easier to have decisions like we had in 1973 that allows for the infanticide of babies. It makes it easier to have what we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years, the euthanasia movement, where, hey, grandma is getting a little older and she's starting to cost a lot of money to take care of her. If she's lived a good life, let's go ahead and kill her off. That's becoming more and more acceptable. You especially see that over in Europe, which has really become a secularized society. That's where you see the euthanasia movement really blossoming over there.
Now, if you think Chris is making this up, do a little Google, Internet, Bing, whatever, DuckDuckGo search, and type in Canada and death panels, and you'll see that euthanasia is becoming more and more acceptable with our neighbors to the north. There was a story I saw not too long ago. There was a relatively young lady who had an illness. It wasn't like going to kill her overnight, but it was something that was going to be protracted and could lead to her having a deteriorating state. And what she needed was a transplant. She needed some sort of, in our country, Chris, what we would consider a simple transplant. I know transplants are big deals, but in America, we've made them something that are very possible. Sometimes you have to wait years. But they flat out told her, too bad, so sad. She's like, well, could I go to another Canadian province and get on a list there? They're like, nope, you can't do that either. But here's a pamphlet on self-induced euthanasia. And she was like, I don't want to end my life just yet. Isn't that horrible?
You remember the case, and I don't remember the name of the woman, but it was really big case in the early 2000s where this woman had been in a vegetative state for years.
Yes.
And her husband wanted to pull the plug. He had found another wife or another woman he was involved with, and he wanted to pull the plug on her, but her family did not. And all throughout that situation, doctors and other people were saying that she's showing signs of life. She can respond. She didn't leave a living will telling what her wishes were, but the husband eventually prevailed and was able to pull the plug on her, and her family and others think that she wanted to live. But in this culture now where quote unquote mercy killing and euthanasia, that was done. You remember that case? You found it?
I looked it up.
What was it again?
Terry Schiavo.
Yes,
Terry Schiavo.
Very famous case. What year was that?
She passed away in 2005.
Yeah, I knew it was early 2000s.
Look, and this points out a very important thing. Some people, while you are, there's a lot of things we as humans avoid, and we do it to our detriment, and we're all guilty of it, right? Not going to the doctor, not going to the dentist, not going to get your eyes checked. Exercise, proper diet, blah, blah, blah. Your estate planning, right? Chris, you recently did that. Suzanne and I have an estate plan. If you are of an opinion that you do or do not want certain things done to you, if you're ever in, God forbid, some horrific accident or crash, then you need to have that spelled out in your estate plan. I won't go into the details. It's a little complex, but go to a good estate planning attorney and get that all worked out. Then, if you ever, God forbid, have something happen to you, your family isn't sitting there arguing about what, Joe or Jill wanted done to them or not done to them as far as life-saving procedures.
And as an attorney, Tim, you also know the importance of estate planning is so that your estate doesn't go into probate.
That too.
And all of your money gets tied up into lawyer fees and court costs. Trying to decide what your wishes are, what to do with your estate. So,
yep, there's a
good
really.
thing to do.
I did not specialize in that area, but I worked with. I had partners I did litigation. I had partners that did estate planning. If anybody ever wants a referral from me, I'd be happy to give you one. But I've got a lot of friends that still do practice law, and it's a little time consuming on the front end. You got to put a little money down, but it's such a relief when you have that in place. It's so much better for yourself, your family, your kids, and all your heirs.
You've been following the big news in Washington about the Washington Post has laid off
Holy
1/3
smokes.
of their staff. They're not going to have a sports page anymore. There was a big rally. Liberals were protesting in front of the Washington Post, accusing Bezos of, quote-unquote, murdering the paper and everything. So I think more than anything, they're worried about losing that liberal voice that has been a bastion for liberals for the last 50, 60, 70 years. And it just shows the changing guard of media. It's talk radio stations like us, the new media. That is the future, not necessarily newspapers and things of that nature.
Talk about self-inflicted suicide, right?
Yeah.
They've done it to themselves. But for some reason, the remedy is to get rid of the sports page and the book section, which I was a little confused about, and their overseas departments as well. So I hope they don't double down on left-wing liberal lunacy, because I think that's what's got them into this pickle in the first place. It's not Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos has probably kept them, talk about something on life support, he's kept the Post going up to this point. I don't know why they're mad at him. It's their fault that they can't put a good product forward that people want to read.
And they don't forget, Jeff Bezos is a businessman. The Washington Post is a business. It's not a charity organization to foment left-wing causes. One of the things I was reading about this, that in 2024, the Washington Post lost $100 million. And Jeff Bezos is a very rich man, but you can't run any business losing $100 million a year. It's not going to be around very long unless you make some drastic changes, and that is what he's done.
Yeah, $100 million here and $100 million there, and even a guy like Jeff Bezos is going to say, "I'm sorry, but the checkbook is closed." And if you wanna pontificate and shed all your liberal tears every day, then you can do what Don Lemon has done.
Exactly.
Go get your own podcast.
Exactly.
Get yourself sponsored. That's what we do here. And look, the radio broadcast, podcast world, that's a ruthless, tough business as well. But if you put on a good product like we've done here at News Talk STL, we started with zero audience. Just think of that. We started with 0 audience and listeners because we did not exist 5 years ago.
Exactly.
And we have built that up to the point from what we understand and believe as far as numbers and ratings and blah, 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 that we're competing with the 1 or 2 other big dogs here in the St. Louis region, because if you look at the numbers, that's the story that is being told. And we can also look at our streaming numbers. That's really important, folks. We love that you listen to us on 109 or 94.1. But if you wouldn't mind just popping open the app every day and listening for some time on that, that would be awesome too, because that's something that we directly see day to day. And Jeff and Joe look at that every single day. So we very, very much appreciate all of our super fans who use the app, get on Facebook and Twitter and Rumble and YouTube and Instagram, because those are things we see immediately. And, Chris, that's the future.
Yeah.
Eventually, someday, every vehicle, some already have it. They got these big-ass LCD screens, and instead of, looking for a radio dial, you're going to load the News Talk STL app onto your car dashboard, your vehicle dashboard. The minute you purchase a vehicle, it's going to be right there. And then you're just going to press that News Talk STL app button, and you're going to listen to us live, or you're going to listen to a podcast, and that's going to be the future. So help us get there by doing it now.
And part of the Washington Post demise is, you remember back in 2024, they decided not to endorse Kamala Harris, and they lost probably about half their subscribers to the newspaper because of that. And they've been accused of taking a more libertarian stance on their editorial page than liberal page. And a lot of people voted with their feet, which you should in a free market economy, and canceled their subscriptions. And they're not the only major newspaper, Tim, that is suffering. That same day, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, it slashed about 15% of its staff. So, it's a free market system. People will pay for what they want. Remember when President slashed the PBS funding, Public for Broadcasting, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and they were crying about Big Bird won't be shown in some of these markets because of that. And I did a Chris's Corner a couple of weeks ago that showed that, surprise, surprise, the people that want that type of liberal programming ponied up, and it's keeping them afloat. That's how it should be.
The Post and other papers, they crushed themselves from both ends of the spectrum. I would imagine that decades ago, there were probably quite a few independents and conservatives that read the Washington Post. Well, they lost that audience when they did things like the Russian collusion hoax. They literally won Pulitzer Prizes for publishing fake news. Yeah. So they lost that whole audience over the years. And then what they did was they whipsawed back the other day, and they pissed off their liberal base. Yeah. And so now nobody wants to read that paper, because you look at the stats on whether people believe the mainstream, what we call the mainstream media, and they're at an all-time approval rating low as well. Like, nobody trusts that. That's why people search out institutions like us, where we tell you that we're giving you an opinion, and then we also tell you when we're also delivering to you nothing more than straight news.
Yeah, and a little bit of good news for liberal media, and it kind of piggybacks on what you're saying, is how people have changed how they digest their news now. The New York Times, on the other hand, saw 1.4 million digital subscribers last year. So they are not doing as bad as some of these liberal publications, but they've changed their business philosophy, their paradigm.
Put forth an accessible, usable product that people actually want to utilize, and you will have a successful business. 4:23 in the PM. Got to get to a break. We're going to step back and look at all the international and national security news that you need to know. There is news coming out of the Russia-Ukraine ongoing war. There's news about the U.S. military doing something in Syria, and lots more. Steve Bucci, going to be talking to him next on the Tim Jones.
Other big news today is we no longer have a nuclear treaty with Russia. The last one, the last START treaty, expired today. So we'll ask Steve Bucci, what does that mean overall between the relations between the United States and Russia?
Relic of the Cold War. What does that mean for the future? All of that with Steve Bucci, and then Chris's Corner immediately after that. That's all up next on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. Not as cold tonight. Low down to 31 degrees, and then a warmer day with a high of 47. Partly cloudy skies, a little breezy. Winds at 15 to 20, some gusts to 30 miles an hour, but staying dry and warmer for Friday. Saturday, mostly sunny and a cold one. We have a high of 36 degrees, but it's a split weekend. While it's cold Saturday, it's much warmer Sunday. Mostly sunny Sunday with a high of 53. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Hey, everybody, it's your buddy Todd from The Right Mind Show. And here's my celebrity friend, Larry Hankin from Seinfeld and Breaking Bad.
I never wanted to end up, talking on the phone to Todd.
The Right Mind Show, Saturday afternoons at 5 on News Talk STL.
There's certain people and entities that we all need in life, right? We need them on standby. We need them on speed dial. You need a good doctor, right? You need a good primary care physician. You need a good healthcare support group. You need a good lawyer. You need a good accountant. You need a good plumber. I've got one for you. Ambassador Plumbing. AmbassadorPlumbing.com is where you find them. Everybody needs a good plumber on that speed dial. If you go to AmbassadorPlumbing.com, you can see their service line, emergency service line, and business line, same number right there at the top of the page, AmbassadorPlumbing.com. Comes from 2 Corinthians to be an ambassador for Christ. You know where they're coming from. Tim Morris, master plumber, 25-plus years of experience. His wonderful wife, Austina, she keeps the railroad running on time and keeps all the ships sailing out every morning. And I tell you, this is a family-owned business. Yeah, so many of the folks that work for Ambassador Plumbing are Morrises or Morris relations. They're such a great business. They're such friendly people. They're really kind. They're really just wonderful folks, and they can take care of everything, and I mean everything. If you've got a plumbing repair that needs to be addressed, like that's something that's maybe just bothersome or maybe it's an emergency, they can handle that. You know, that I'm talking about your faucets and your toilets. These things always break down at the wrong time, right? Well, AmbassadorPlumbing.com, your one-stop shop for your fix-it needs. They also handle renovations and rehabilitations and new builds, and if you're going to do that, you're finally going to tackle that master bath renovation this year. Yep, they're the plumber that you need to have as part of your team. BBB rated and also blessed. AmbassadorPlumbing.com. That's AmbassadorPlumbing.com.
PRI Global now has Prismatic, an AI-driven platform that can help you and your business, especially in construction. Simplify your operations, secure data, modernize your business from the cloud up. Visit PRIGlobal.com. Innovation with talent and technology. People, process, platform. PRI Global delivers all three. Check them out. PRIGlobal.com. PRIGlobal.com.
SR1 Sundays.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Kaiser. Be sure and check out my show, Straight Lines, this and every Sunday at 8 p.m., right after Stand and Fight, part of SR1 Sundays. Let's meet right here and let's peel back some layers of this crazy world, and you might be surprised at what we find. Straight Lines with Elizabeth Kaiser on SR1 Sundays at 8 p.m., right here on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Straight Lines with Elizabeth Kaiser on News Talk STL. This Steve Bucci update is brought to you by Hydrodynamics. For all your lawn irrigation, outdoor lighting, drainage, hardscapes, and turf management, online at hydrodynamicscorp.com. It's the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
The U.S. Central Command says a U.S. Navy fighter jet shot down an Iranian drone that was approaching the aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. This is a post by the Associated Press sharing that information, saying that there was unclear intent. Now, in an emailed statement Tuesday, U.S. Central Command said the drone, quote, aggressively approached the aircraft carrier with unclear intent and it continued to fly toward the ship despite de-escalatory measures taken by U.S. forces operating in international waters.
429 on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show, and we've got our military expert coming up, Tim, but that doesn't seem like a very smart move by the Iranians to send a drone towards probably the mightiest U.S. ship that we have in our arsenal right now.
It's like begging for destruction, it seems like.
Exactly.
Death Wish 12.
All right, let's get to Steve Bucci.
Steve Bucci, visiting fellow for Special Ops at the Heritage Foundation.
Oh, yes. What were you about to ask me?
Do you expect me to talk?
And as he does every Thursday, Steve Bucci, visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's great to be back on the show.
Good. Steve, before we get to business, the Olympics start Friday. Do you have a particularly favorite winter sporting event that you like?
Yeah, I mean, I love most of them. I like the cross-country skis. I love watching the cross-country skiers. I mean, I obviously don't ski as skillfully or as hard as those folks do, but it's always great to watch and kind of exciting. But you know, some of the non-standard ones, I actually like watching curling.
Yeah!
Tim and I love that. We've been talking about
It's the
that.
official sport of the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show, Steve.
Curling.
You guys have got the right attitude then on it.
Exactly.
It's a big thing. We have leagues up here. I don't play because I really can't skate. I can't stand up on ice very well. So I enjoy watching hockey. My grandson plays hockey.
Fantastic.
I've got friends who curl, but I tend to do a lot better with sports where you can work real hard, not have any particular skill. So I'm good with that. But I think I'm excited. I hope it's a good competition and you know, go USA.
I do very well watching them with a hot cup of cocoa. I think I need a gold medal for that one. All right, Steve, you heard that report there. The Iranians sent a drone towards the USS Abraham Lincoln. As we said, that doesn't seem like a particular smart move. Tomorrow, Iranian and U.S. officials will meet in Oman since that incident. What are you expecting from that? Any breakthroughs?
I don't expect any particular breakthroughs diplomatically. The Iranians are continuing to lie, to threaten, to bluster. They're really hoping against hope that they can stay in power. And what's really going to be interesting is the messages we send to the Iranian people to see, you know, they're going to be watching to see if America really does have their back. And I pray that we do. And I think it's a time in history when that evil regime needs to go. And I think we can do that without, we don't have to send American troops there. We don't have to take over the country. But I think we should use our other elements of power, not just our economic and diplomatic elements of power, but perhaps our military elements of power to tip those scales. We need to hit some targets that send the message to the Iranian regime to leave. And I'm not sure we'll do that. I hope we do, because I think it's the right time. I think they are in the weakest position they've been in since they got into power, and I think it's time to free the Iranian people.
Steve, I'm going to presume that this is largely unrelated, unless you please tell me otherwise, but the other big story today was about the fact that in that same neck of the woods, the U.S. conducted 5 strikes on ISIS targets all across Syria in response to a December 13th ISIS attack that killed 2 American soldiers and a U.S. contractor. Everybody probably remembers that. It wasn't that long ago. But, Steve, even if it is unrelated, I would bet the Iranians are closely watching this just to, you know, maybe take one more look at how strong U.S. firepower is, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's a direct connection. I think these strikes were directly connected to the ISIS attack that you mentioned that happened earlier. ISIS and Iran don't normally work together. ISIS are radical Sunnis, and they hate the Shia,
Mm.
and obviously the Iranians are radical Shia, and they don't like people like ISIS or Al Qaeda, but they do sometimes make common cause against us. But look, Iran doesn't really need any more messaging that America can take them. The Iranians couldn't defeat Israel, right? I mean, and not just couldn't defeat them, Israel took them apart piece by piece, their proxies, their stuff at home. We did our strikes against their nuclear facilities, but the Israelis shut down their airspace, shut down their air defense capabilities, and basically left them completely helpless to the precision strikes that we had to make with the particular ordnance that only we have. Iran, unless Iran's really completely delusional, they know they can't win in a fight with us. So, all of the bluster and the threatening, oh, this is going to be a regional war if you do anything to us. Yeah, no, it's not. It's just going to be a lot of extra people shooting at Iran. And Iran, if the decision is made to strike them, Iran's not going to be able to do much anything. And I'm okay with that. They've been screwing with people for a long time. It's time for them to go.
Speaking with Steve Bucci, visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Staying in the region, Steve, Saudi Arabia and Turkey has solidified their diplomatic and trade relations this week. The president of Turkey, Erdogan, flew to Riyadh to meet with the Crown Prince. Turkey has been kind of drifting a little bit towards Russia. They are a NATO ally, but sometimes they don't act like it. Do these agreements, this closer relationship, does it bode well for the United States?
I think it's encouraging. You're right. Turkey has been, following a different path than you would hope a NATO ally would follow. Mr. Erdogan is a Muslim Brotherhood guy, which are radical Sunnis. The Saudis are also Sunnis, so that it makes sense that they would be working together. The Saudis are not our enemy right now. Erdogan, he can do things now and then that's kind of not necessarily what we would like him to do. So hopefully the Saudi engagement with the Turks will moderate some of the other overtures they've made to Russia, to some of these other players. I think it's a good thing. And hopefully the Crown Prince will explain to him that, no, sir, Turkey is not going to run the Muslim world again. You had your chance to do that. It didn't work out that well for the world. Nobody's really interested in you doing it again, but we're happy to work with you to make sure your interests are considered as we go forward. So a good development there, I hope, and hopefully it'll continue to move in a positive direction.
Speaking to Steve Bucci, international expert for us every Thursday afternoon from the Heritage Foundation. Steve, similar to the slow walking that Iran seems to be engaging with, kind of trying to kick the can down the road with any sort of U.S. intervention in their country, the Russia-Ukrainian war likewise continues to drag on, with the Russians seeming to try to just parlay everything, all the sides against the others. But, Steve, there was a little bit of a development today whereby U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff announced that U.S., Ukrainian, and Russian delegations, so it's trilateral, did agree to a prisoner swap. Steve, could this be a potential, maybe slightly optimistic sign of better things to come that could see an end to this conflict?
Well, it's a positive development. They've done prisoner swaps in the past, and it hasn't really affected the actual conflict part. I'm guessing this is another one of those situations. I'd like to be optimistic about it. Maybe it'll be a bigger swap. We'll get more people back. I'd like to see the Russians release some of the children that they've stolen, supposedly moved for their own protection, that came from Ukraine. But until Putin himself sits down and talks and starts to make some realistic concessions I'm not going to get overly excited that the conflict is ending. I think it's still a long way to go, mostly because Putin is not a reliable negotiator. He'll play games, as you say. He'll kick the can down the road, and in my mind, he'll keep stringing people along while the whole time he's hitting civilian targets and doing other horrific things. So my optimism level for that conflict is still pretty low.
Speaking of Russia, Steve, the final nuclear arms control treaty between the U.S. and Russia expired yesterday. I want to get your thoughts on that. Do you see a new agreement being signed, and does this threaten the United States in any way?
It doesn't threaten the United States. Russia does not have any interest in sending a nuke towards the United States because he knows our response capability exceeds our defensive capability against particularly, like smaller numbers of incoming ICBMs is better than his. But we don't want an exchange like that because our defenses are not as robust as we would like. That's the whole purpose of President Trump's idea of the Golden Dome, sort of riffing on the Iron Dome that the Israelis have. So I don't think that's a big thing. Now, President Trump's not a big arms control guy, but with this agreement expiring, now we're going to look at, are they going to do some sort of negotiation? Maybe we can do something with this lever to get the Russians to back off a little bit on Ukraine. It's a possibility, but it's also a possibility we'll just let it drop. They'll let it drop, and we both know what the others have, and neither side is all that excited about starting to spend bazillions of dollars to get new missiles and new nukes. We're both doing product improvements, but nobody wants an all-out arms war again. It's just too expensive, and for what reason? Both of us have more than enough weapons to deter the other side from doing anything. We'll probably just let things take their course and let that be the lever to maintain the peace. I don't think we need to sign anything else.
Steve, home front question for you. Chris and I were talking yesterday about the fact that, the Democrats may briefly have the upper hand on this pushback on ICE and federal law enforcement. But like with their defund the police movement, they'll likely quickly, and you're already starting to see them, kind of jump the shark on that issue. And, Steve, that's been proven true because of the fact they're not only calling to defund ICE, now they want to defund Customs and Border Patrol, and they want to defund the entire Department of Homeland Security. Steve, how insanely irrational and dangerous is that for the United States of America in today's world?
It is ridiculously irrational. Look, when they set up DHS, it was a gigantic department, a lot of different duties, a lot of different agencies underneath them. But frankly, with the actions they've taken in the last year, absent the debate on, whether these last two incidents were righteous shoots or not, they've closed the border down. They've stopped the rampant abuse of our national sovereignty, and they've gotten a lot of people to self-deport. And a bunch of them, particularly criminals who did not want to self-deport, they've caught and they've gotten them out of the country. They have done a great job. The Department of Homeland Security is doing better in the last year than it has since it was established right after 9/11. To suddenly say, oh, my goodness, we didn't like what they were doing in Minneapolis, so we should just shut the whole department down. Really? We're still trying to get the Department of Education shut down, and it hasn't done a darn positive thing since the day it was founded. But the Democrats, they don't like something a department does. They want to shut it down completely. I'm sorry. They're still embarrassed that the Republicans were able to impeach Mayorkas. And now they'd love to take down Trump's DHS head just to get a tit for tat. But I don't think that's going to happen. DHS may make some adjustments, and Tom Homan is doing that. in Minneapolis, he's not backing off. He's tuning it up so it's more precise, and so things have a little more, command control on what the individual moves are. I think it's just going to make it more effective, and it's going to drive the Dems crazy. So, I think the majority of Americans, they may not have liked the two incidences where the people were killed, but I think they realize overall what DHS has been doing in all of its different pieces is the right thing. They're still, looking at the fraud in Minnesota with the Somalis and the healthcare and child care facilities. I mean, the scams there were just so over the top, and it's revealed something that's going on in other parts of the country as well. DHS has a role. They're playing it well, and I think they're going to continue to do that, and I hope they do because we need them.
And that is Steve Bucci, visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, heritage.org, on X, S. Bucci. Steve, when we talk to you next Thursday, we're going to need a report from you on your thoughts on the curling competition, so be ready for that.
Okay, I'll be keeping an eye out.
All right. Thanks, Steve. And Chris's Corner is why the Democrats' DHS demands are dead on arrival. I'll tell you all about that next on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Like and subscribe to us on Rumble. News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. Not as cold tonight. Low down to 31 degrees, and then a warmer day with a high of 47. Partly cloudy skies, a little breezy. Winds at 15 to 20, some gusts to 30 miles an hour, but staying dry and warmer for Friday. Saturday, mostly sunny and a cold one. We have a high of 36 degrees, but it's a split weekend. While it's cold Saturday, it's much warmer Sunday. Mostly sunny Sunday with a high of 53. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
If you find yourself feeling out of place in the world, it's comforting to know conservative values haven't been abandoned everywhere.
Thanks for being my voice in all this.
This is News Talk STL.
There are people out there that feel the way that I feel and say what I say.
Welcome home.
Hey, Columbo here for Rockwood Charcoal. Rockwood is made from 100% pure Missouri oak and hickory, so you're cooking with the best and supporting local industry and a local business all at once. There's over 100 area Rockwood retailers. Find yours at rockwoodcharcoal.com.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness One. Wellness One is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on Newstalk STL. And you can visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
There's something magical about walking into your backyard and knowing your family is completely safe and secure. Hi, I'm Sean Long, owner of STL Fence Works. That's the feeling my team and I have been creating for metro area families for more than 50 years. Whether you're adding your first fence or finally creating the outdoor sanctuary you've always wanted, we offer premium vinyl and stunning ornamental options, all designed around your family's specific needs and lifestyle. While other companies struggle with supply delays and rising costs, we've always proudly used all American-made materials, which means better pricing and faster installation for you. Our experienced craftsmen exemplify our motto, your satisfaction is our passion. From Warrenton to Wildwood, your neighbors trust us because we live here too. And we care about your project as much as you do. Right now is the golden time to build with flexible financing options and a commitment to completing your fence on time and on budget. Visit stlfenceworks.com.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
and you've had success on immigration. Illegal border crossings are at historic lows, right?
You know, it's so nice that you said that.
But if you look at
Tom, what you just said.
It's true.
No, but it's so nice. I hope you air it. It's so nice what you said, because that's called good reporting. That's called fair reporting.
449 on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show, and President trolling the NBC News host there, admitting that border crossings are down. Tim, we know that the Dems are holding DHS funding hostage. That temporary agreement to fund DHS ends on February 13th. The Democrats have issued their 10 demands. That
10?
There's 10 demands that they are wanting to let this funding go through.
I'm sure they're all reasonable.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to tell you next on Chris's Corner why those demands are, quote, dead on arrival.
Chris.
And if you don't know, now you know.
And now, Chris's Corner.
Temporary funding for the Department of Homeland Security runs out on February 13th, and Democrats are now using that deadline to roll out what they're calling immigration enforcement reforms. Let's be honest about what this really means. This is not about reform. This is about restraining federal law enforcement and turning ICE into a paper-pushing agency that needs permission slips to do its job. Here's what Democrats are demanding. They want judicial warrants before agents can enter private property. They want to ban masks. They want agents to identify themselves at all times. They want enforcement banned at schools, churches, hospitals, courts, and polling places. They want new use of force standards. They want local governments, many which openly oppose ICE, investigating federal agents. They want mandatory body cameras, and they even want to regulate what uniforms and equipment DHS can use. And just to sweeten the pot, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are also calling for Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to be removed and federal agents pulled back from Minnesota. That is what they're hoping will prompt negotiations with President Trump. Here's the problem. Every single one of these demands weakens immigration enforcement. Judicial warrants for every entry, that sounds nice on MSNBC or MS Now, but in the real world, it means dangerous criminal aliens can have more time to hide, move, or disappear. Banning masks and regulating equipment, that's not reform. That's endangering officers who already have faced threats, doxing, and targeted harassment. Creating enforcement-free zones around churches, hospitals, and schools. Congratulations, you've just created safe havens for criminals who now know exactly where ICE isn't allowed to go. And letting sanctuary city governments investigate federal agents, that's like letting anti-police activists supervise narcotics officers. Republicans see this for what it is, a death by 1,000 procedural cuts. This isn't about accountability. It's about making enforcement impossible. And that's why these demands are non-starters for Republicans. Now, contrast that with what Republicans are actually asking for. They want an end to sanctuary cities, cities that refuse to cooperate with federal law enforcement while still demanding federal tax dollars. They want the SAVE Act passed, legislation focused on enforcing existing immigration law, closing loopholes, and making sure criminal aliens are identified and removed. That's the core divide. Democrats want to redesign immigration enforcement to make it politically comfortable. Republicans want immigration law enforced. Democrats say ICE is too aggressive. Republicans say the border is still broken and communities are paying the price. So when Democrats threaten to withhold DHS funding unless these demands are met, Republicans aren't hearing compromise, they're hearing leverage. And leverage that undermines public safety isn't leverage Republicans are willing to accept. Bottom line, this fight isn't about masks, cameras, or uniforms. It's about whether federal government is allowed to enforce immigration law or whether enforcement exists only on paper. Republicans are drawing a line, and on this issue, they're not blinking. That's today's Chris's Corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the era of bipartisan negotiations has pretty much been dead and buried for a long time, unfortunately.
What they're asking for, they basically want to defang ICE and let these local sanctuary cities and these anti-enforcement border enforcement mayors basically dictate what these officers can do to do their job.
Let's say we did that. Well, we would basically relive the experiment that the left had us all undergo when they defunded all of their local police departments and police. There was nothing at that time that the federal government, it was kind of between Trump 1 and Biden, right? A lot of it happened during Biden's Summer of Love. And anyway, you know, what they do with their local police departments, the federal government can only intercede so much. So they did that already, right? They They did everything on the local level that they want to do now on the federal level, and it boomeranged on them, right? It boomeranged on them badly. How many times do you hear them say defund the police anymore? They don't. Now they're like, oh, we got to go after horrible ICE. Well, I think it's going to turn into the same thing.
Exactly. And I hope that the Republican messaging on these demands is very strong, because if you read them and you hear them, you're like, oh, that sounds reasonable. But as I went through that, through Chris's Corner, all of these demands, they hurt law enforcement. They don't help it. Republicans have given in. The administration has given in on a couple of their demands. Body cameras. The ICE enforcement agents now will be wearing body cameras. And as our guest yesterday, when we were talking about better ID, we don't want these officers doxxed. We don't want their faces being shown, because we know that these people, I read a story yesterday where a person in California, they followed a DHS agent home and basically put it on Facebook and on social media where these people live. They had bullhorns telling people in the neighborhood that this guy is an ICE agent. So I think that is a fundamentally bad idea. But Republicans, have to get the message right on this, because the demands do sound reasonable, but they have to point out clearly why they're not.
Mm-hmm. I think the left walked into a trap on the whole body cam thing. You ever watch Cops, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Cops is body cams on the small screen every day. Most criminals are crazy people, right? And when you see a criminal acting in a criminal way, most people recoil at that and go, holy smokes. Body cams for regular law enforcement have been a game changer and a lifesaver in many instances. And you hear of very, very little problems that police are always accused of brutality, blah, blah, blah. 99% of the time, police officers are just trying to do their job, and the body cams back them up on that.
Definitely. I mean, I want the public to see these ICE agents having ice thrown at them, having debris thrown at them.
Right.
I want to
spit on,
cuss at, having whistles blown in your face. I mean, I saw one video where this woman, I don't blame the ICE officer, he pushed the lady out of his personal space. She basically had the camera about maybe half inch from his face, and everywhere she was going, she was like filming him, and he had enough of it. He pushed her out of the way. I mean, look, you should be able to tape or videotape law enforcement. That's fine. But when you're all up in their grill and you have a camera like a minute from their face and you're harassing them, I think that steps over the line.
Remember the sound we played a week or so ago? It was the Hispanic ICE agent. He was rolling onto a scene, and that was from audio.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was from video. The video, there was a video camera running, and this guy pulls up. He's very rational, very calm. He goes, why are all of you yelling, screaming, honking, and blowing whistles? I'm here to arrest an adjudicated criminal illegal alien sex offender. And they're all like, well, that wasn't me. That was Bozo over there. And he's like, stop blowing the horns and blowing the whistles. You guys are defending a criminal sex offender. And they're like, okay. I mean, I think it's a great thing to have the cameras running with these guys are doing their jobs.
Yeah, I think the body cameras are going to be a detriment to these protesters. It's going to show the public exactly what these ICE officers are facing on a daily basis. All right, Tim, we've got the Speaker's stump speech.
Yeah, we are going to talk about, oh my goodness, I forgot. It's going to be a heck of a surprise. I wrote it down, and now I can't find my notes.
And then at 5:23, we'll speak with Raul Mas. We met him in Israel. He is from Cuba, and we're going to ask him about, is the Cuban government about to fall? You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
It's Ken Williams, and my favorite Capriati sandwich is the Capistrami. You've got hot pastrami, melty Swiss cheese, crunchy coleslaw, and zesty Russian dressing. What else do you need? I love Capriati's, and you will too.
On Manchester at McKnight in Rock Hill.
Hey there, News Talk STL family and friends. This is your financial friend, Chris Cooper, here with Serenity Wealth Management with a special invitation to join us this weekend for the Serenity Wealth Now show. Joining us in the studio, we've got Kyle Dent of Shamrock's Pub and Grill out in St. Peter's. We're going to talk a little bit about the community aspect that makes ownership of a bar and grill successful. So tune in right here, Sunday morning, 9 a.m., News Talk STL or Serenity Wealth Now social media outlets.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors, LLC.
Connor Roofing. You can count on Connor. Connor Roofing is now a two-time winner of the National Best of the Best Award for customer satisfaction for roofing, storm damage restoration, siding, gutters, both residential and commercial. Please visit ConnorRoofing.com for an estimate. And remember, you can count on Connor.
I've got Dr. Michael Lewis here, West Point graduate, physician, and retired Army colonel. Is considered the world's leading expert on the use of omega-3s for traumatic brain injury and concussions. Stuart Tomp brings over 30 years of experience in the supplement industry, brought $1 billion of products to the market, and has appeared in over 6,000 media interviews worldwide, and travels internationally and teaches on health.
Stuart Tomk here, and I've come across the biggest breakthrough in personalized nutrition I've seen in 25 years.
Dr. Lewis here. For the first time, we can measure cellular and gut health. So you can start testing and stop guessing and make decisions based on real data. I'm working with world-class scientists and physicians, and what they're doing is changing everything.
You can message me at elizabeth@statmedicalllc.com. That is Elizabeth at statmedicalllc.com.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefontaine, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The Senate is debating funding for Homeland Security. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says he's astounded that GOP leaders are calling the Democrat proposals political or unworkable.
It's about people's basic rights. It's about people's safety. If Republicans don't like our proposals, pouting is not going to make the chaos in the streets go away. The Republicans need to explain why to the American people.
While Majority Leader John Thune says most of the Democrats' demands over Homeland Security funding are very unrealistic and unserious.
Now, the onus is on Democrats to negotiate in good faith and reach an agreement quickly. Notice I said negotiate, Mr. President. This is not a blank check situation where Republicans just agree to a list of Democrat demands.
U.S. and Russian talks in Abu Dhabi have led to a resumption of military communications between the two countries.
The agreement emerged from a meeting between senior Russian and American military officials in the capital of the United Arab Emirates, according to the U.S. military in Europe. High-level military communication was suspended in 2021 as relations between Moscow and Washington became increasingly strained ahead of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Meanwhile, talks in Abu Dhabi between American, Russian and Ukrainian officials on ending the war entered a second day. I'm Karen Shamas.
An Arizona Department of Public Safety helicopter responding to a shootout between police and a suspect has crashed in an accident that killed the pilot and a trooper on board. The helicopter was assisting law enforcement officers Wednesday night. On Wall Street, the Dow down by 592 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Ask yourself this question. Is it really worth holding on to that timeshare that you know you need to get rid of? Here's the truth. The average maintenance fee just went up over 17%. That could have been 117%, and there's nothing you can do about it. When you buy a timeshare, you give them a blank check for annual maintenance and assessment fees. I'm Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group. For 15 years, I've helped over 50,000 families cancel their timeshare. Not sell it, not transfer it, cancel it. Did you buy a timeshare because they told you it was a great investment and your maintenance fees would never go up? That's a lie. Are you ready to get rid of your timeshare once and for all? Simply call us and I'll send you our timeshare exit kit that explains all your options for cancellation.
Call Wesley now for your timeshare exit kit. 800-366-6161. That's 800-366-6161. 800-366-6161.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. Not as cold tonight. Low down to 31 degrees and then a warmer day with a high of 47. Partly cloudy skies, a little breezy. Winds at 15 to 20, some gusts to 30 miles an hour, but staying dry and warmer for Friday. Saturday, mostly sunny and a cold one. We have a high of 36 degrees, but it's a split weekend. While it's cold Saturday, it's much warmer Sunday. Mostly sunny Sunday with a high of 53. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Stifel, serving investors for over 130 years. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
Hey, Jamie Allman here for my favorite go-to store for seafood, gourmet goodness, and tons of wine. It's Stars, 1135 South Big Bend. A huge selection of seafood flown in from the coast. Lemon sole, halibut, Maryland lump crab, Gulf shrimp, and you gotta try the trout dip. Plus, imported and domestic hand-cut cheeses, lots of hand-picked wines at great prices, hard-to-find gourmet foods, and fresh roasted coffee using only the best quality beans. Stars, 1135 South Big Bend, just off of Highway 40.
Ever feel like just a number in a waiting room? Hi, I'm Shannon Tribune, Director of Operations with Body of Health Direct Primary Care. Navigating the medical system can be a maze of stress. I'm your personal guide at Body of Health. I handle the messy parts of medical care, the logistics and complex coordination, both in and outside our walls, so you and Dr. Tobler, that's my dad, can focus on what matters most, your health. At Body of Health, you're not just a patient, you're part of the family, because that's healthcare the way it ought to be. To learn more, schedule a discovery call at bodyofhealth.com.
If you have a phone, you have a radio.
I listen to News Talk STL on the app driving to work.
Download the News Talk STL app.
You got to get the News Talk STL app.
Love the app. Can listen anywhere in St. Louis.
And listen anytime.
News Talk STL right on my phone.
Anywhere. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
Senator, it may be a bit nuanced for you, but what President Trump is referring to is the media saying that the affordability crisis was generated by this administration when it was you and President Biden who destroyed the buying power of the American people. So there is an affordability crisis, and you were front and center in it.
So let me make sure that I understand. Donald Trump is not saying that affordability, what's happening to families right now, is a hoax?
He is saying that trying to lay the blame at this administration rather than the Biden-Warren economy is a hoax.
Okay.
As Tony Colombo said earlier today, Scott Bessent is becoming must-see TV anytime he's before Congress. The guy knows how to tangle with some of the Democrats' top dogs and hand it right back to them. And he's 1,000% correct on placing the blame on this, quote, affordability crisis.
And you remember the reports that we heard a few months ago. He's probably someone you don't want to get on the wrong side of as well, because remember he told a guy he was going to punch him out. Remember that? One of the administration officials said,
he may be a black belt or something.
Said, if you don't stop talking crap, I'm going to punch you in your face. So Scott Bessent, tough guy on Capitol Hill, tough guy in real life.
Indeed. And he's got all the facts on his side as well. We're going through a rough spot economically here, because anytime you're trying to repair damage, it's a mess, right? Someone comes in, trashes your house. The cleanup before the rebuild looks absolutely disastrous. But if you look at some of the underlying underpinnings of the economy, when have we ever had 4 to 5% GDP growth? It has been decades. We now have core inflation numbers coming in way below 2%, which will hopefully drag down the overall inflationary numbers. But, you don't turn the Titanic around in one fell swoop.
Yeah, and the Democrats are playing politics. They know exactly what the president meant, that he said the Democrats are using affordability as an issue, that it's a hoax, not that affordability is a hoax. And they know that, and they're playing politics, of course. But what really will make the difference is the economic numbers that have been coming out. And as you just alluded to, Tim, they've been excellent. They've been on an uptrend.
They have. Markets have been suffering the last few days, but that's because tech was, many people have been warning for a couple years that tech was over bubbled, basically. And a lot of the earnings are still good. These companies are still solid, but Wall Street is very fickle, and even when you have, it's kind of like the opposite in D.C., when you don't give somebody a when you don't give somebody an increase from their prior year bureaucratic budget, then that's considered a cut. Well, on Wall Street, even when you exceed expectations, if you don't exceed them enough, then the company gets punished. And so if people are wondering, that's, I think, largely what's going on, is that Microsoft and Meta and all the big tech companies are are drag right now because they were probably overvalued a little bit with the run-up, and there's going to be some profit taking. As Jeff Allen says, everything's on sale. Great time to buy.
Exactly. And I think also the markets are responding to the fact that, people have talked about AI is going to be eliminating jobs in the next 5-10 years significantly. Well, we're seeing that sped up a little, where a lot of jobs are being lost because of AI. But this is a great country, and we're resilient, and we'll get over this like we always do.
Yeah, think about all the I know this is it's easy for us to say, right? We talk for a living, and until they replace us, Chris, by a couple of ebony and ivory robots, then we'll stay here. But and I think people always want to know they're hearing from a real person. But look, we've gone through industrial revolutions before, right? And there was lots of doom and gloom when the horse was replaced with the horseless carriage, when hand manufacturing was replaced by the assembly line. And people said, oh my gosh, there's never going to be jobs for workers ever again. We adapt, we change, and then guess what, Chris? New jobs are created out of this.
Yeah, the automobile industry put a big dent on the black, what do you call the people that hammer the horseshoes and stuff? The blacksmiths.
Blacksmiths.
Yes, put them out of business.
Yeah.
But hey, I want to get your thoughts.
Those jobs go away, other new ones come in.
Exactly. I want to get your thoughts on this report from the Attorney General's office saying that federal investigators are investigating these gambling machines for possible money laundering and other potential crimes among these companies. Could we be seeing the end of the quote-unquote illegal gambling machines here in Missouri?
Are we talking the VLTs?
Yes.
Not the not the bacon, lettuce, and tomatoes. The video lottery terminals, as Chris is referring to, the gray machine. They're called gray. They're called gray machines, not because they are gray. Well, some of them might be gray, but because they're in that gray area between legality and illegality. So this is a new. So many new things have been invented or brought to the market over the last few years. Our laws don't keep up with them, right? So like gambling machines are illegal, but you know what they've done with these VLTs? They've made them not games of chance, but games of skill. And so they tell you what the next pull is going to view, but you have to pay to get to that. And let's say it says, okay, the next time you put a quarter in this machine, it's going to be 3 cherries, and you're going to win $1. So you're like, okay, I'll do that because maybe then I'll get $500 after that. So you're paying to see what the next thing is going to be. So it's not a complete game of chance. You know what's going to come up next, but what they get you on is you hope you get to that. You hope you get to see when that next big jackpot is. So you put 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks in the machine in order to maybe get to that 500.
And I think
that's what they are.
And I think you could say you're basically gambling to see if your next few pulls are going to be a winner.
And by our discussion just now you all understand. We gave you the hypothetical. That's why they're gray machines. Okay, so there's a couple of big companies that have gone ahead and taken advantage of this legal loophole. And the two biggest ones that I'm aware of, and I'm sure there's several more, Torch and J&J Ventures. Okay?
Torch is the one I've heard of.
Yeah, and J&J Ventures is another big dog, and there's a bunch of others too. And so they've gone into everywhere. They've gone into gas stations, they've gone into bar and grills, they've gone into convenience stores, pool halls, wherever they can put a machine. And everybody goes, well, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be here or not, but boy, it sure makes me a lot of money.
Yeah.
And everybody gets a cut, and everyone's happy. And
not everybody gets a cut. And I was going to ask you, isn't really the bottom line of this is that the state is saying we're not getting our cut?
The state's not getting the cut.
We're not getting our cut, and we can't we're not regulating them.
The players get a cut sometimes.
Yeah.
The people whose establishments they're in, they get a cut, and the owners of machines get a cut. But you're right. The state's going, what about us? Well, see, the thing is, the prosecutors in the state, in Missouri, they haven't known what to do either, because they're like, well, we could bring a case, we could confiscate these machines, we could make arrests, we could bring charges. Maybe the Attorney General's office could bring a civil lawsuit as well for a declaratory judgment. But the problem is everyone pretty much agrees the law doesn't define what these things are and whether they can be here or not. So in the meantime, there's been legislation that's been moving through the legislature for the past 5-6 years. Everybody has a different opinion as to what that legislation should look like, and the casinos, Chris, don't want the legislation at all. Now, what I would say to the casinos is, do you all realize that while you've been killing all these bills, you've been losing money because these machines are in operation? So when you think that Torch and J&J and the casinos and all the other groups would get together in a room and say, okay, none of us are coming out of here alive unless we figure something out. In the meantime, maybe the Attorney General has decided that she has got a great new novel legal argument, and she may be making some moves on this finally.
Yeah, I think if these gray machines do come to an end, I think if there is evidence that graft and money laundering things may come out, that could be the death of these things.
Then you may finally see a bill.
Yeah, that's true.
That you may when you force people to come up, when you absolutely force people to come up with a solution versus the end of something, then it seems like they finally figure something out. Mm-hmm. There was something that was going on this summer between a giant healthcare company in Missouri and the University of Missouri and somebody else, and it was this big row, like this big argument, and they could not get on the same page. And to her credit, Cindy O'Loughlin, the Senate president, got involved in this, and she said, you all sit down and figure this out, or I'm going to run a bill that none of you are going to like. And they said, okay, and they figured it out. So I know it's a tough problem with these gray machines, but these people are very smart, obviously. They're very entrepreneurial. I think that if they came in a room, locked the door, and refused to come out until they had a solution, that they could figure something out. Because if they don't, Chris, like you're pointing out, the Attorney General and law enforcement may finally say enough is enough, especially if there's criminal activity. That could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, where they finally shut these things down and say, we don't know whether or not you're legal or illegal, but you are conducting illegal activities with these devices.
And you're up to Jeff City every week. There's another bill that is making its way through the legislature to raise the speed limit on some of our highways to 75 or 80. I'm not sure. I enjoyed an 80 miles per hour speed limit when I was working in Iowa, and we were living in South Dakota. We were staying there. And, man, it was so weird being able to drive legally 80 miles per hour. I kept looking at my speedometer like I'm doing something wrong. And I was like, no, it's legal. What do you think?
I think it's got to be appropriate for the highway on which you were on. There are parts of northern Missouri that look like Iowa South that you can see for miles without end on both sides, front and back, where you could easily have a 75 to 80 mile an hour speed limit, which is what most people travel in those areas anyway. And so why don't you go ahead and make it so? So, yeah, I think it depends on where. Now, you're down south in the hills and the dales of southern Missouri. Probably not, because you've got too many hills and hollers and hairpin curves. But up north, where it is flat as a pancake in Iowa, Nebraska looking, I think you could do it up in that area.
And MoDOT, of course, is making the argument that this is going to increase traffic deaths by increasing the speed limit, even though you always hear the argument that these roads that are built nowadays are really made for 80, 90, maybe even 100 miles per hour speed limits.
Again, appropriate for the circumstances. Speaker's stump speech, which I forgot before the break. I remember now. I'm glad you brought up all that Missouri-centric stuff, because I'm going to talk about Missouri Freedom Caucus momentum. I haven't talked about the Missouri Freedom Caucus in quite a while. Shame on me, right? I'm the director of the Missouri Freedom Caucus, and they're very busy up in Jefferson City. So I thought I'd remind you all of what their big top 5 platform was, and give you. Chris gave you some inside baseball there. I'm going to give you a little bit more about what bills are actually moving through the legislature. After that, Raul Mas, our old friend from Israel. Raul is a Cuban-American, lives in Miami. He is a former banker and financier. He is a Newsmax contributor, and he's got lots of things to say about the ouster of Maduro and what that might mean next for Cuba. So we'll talk to him at 5:25. Chris, what are we going to talk about near the end of the program today?
Christopher Columbus is making a comeback.
Oh,
and I will give you the skivvy on that.
Cristobal.
Chris is coming back.
Chris is coming back. All right, all that.
Not from the grave.
Not from the grave.
Let me put that in there.
In a way.
Yeah, in a way.
I also want to remind you, we are your Winter Games station. Winter Games beginning tomorrow night. I can't believe it. It's finally here. The opening ceremonies next week and the week after. We will have updates 4 times a day at News Talk STL live to keep you up to speed on all your Winter Games activities. and how the U.S. is doing in all of them, from curling to hockey to downhill skiing and all the weird stuff as well. And finally, Chris and I are heading to Lincoln Days, yes, in Springfield, Friday, February 20, 2 weeks. Can you believe that? 2 weeks from today, we will be down in beautiful Springfield, Missouri at the Oasis Hotel and Convention Center right outside the convention center doors. We'll be inside, but outside the ballroom there, and we'll be broadcasting live, bringing you all your state leaders and policy makers. Without further ado, let's talk about some of them as part of today's Speaker Stump Speech. Missouri Freedom Caucus momentum.
Listen to me, listen to me.
I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius.
It's time for the Speaker's Stump Speech, sponsored by Hanson's Tree Service at hansonstree.com.
I was inspired by this, not just because of one of the many hats and roles that I have agreed to undertake as the director of the Missouri Freedom Caucus here, but I heard Nick Schroer giving a little update on one of our shows earlier today, and I thought, this would be a good time to tell folks what's going on in Jefferson City. Chris addressed some of the big contentious items of the session and some other things that are going on, but there's lots happening. The Missouri Freedom Caucus did put forth their platform priorities this year. I think they first published it back in October. So first of all, let me tell you, the Missouri Freedom Caucus it's not supposed to be by design a large group. There's about to become 14 Freedom Caucuses in 14 states around the country. Some of them are little teeny tiny. They're just a couple freedom and liberty fighters. Some are a little bit larger, like in Wyoming. Wyoming is I believe our most mature Freedom Caucus next to South Carolina. Wyoming's Freedom Caucus in the House got so large that they actually took the majority, and one of their founding Freedom Caucus members in Wyoming, John Bear, that's his real name, how perfect for a Wyoming Speaker of the House, he is now the Speaker of the Wyoming House. Yeah, one of the founders of the Wyoming Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus is supposed to be, at its essence and core, the conservative conscience, the North Star of the freedom and liberty movement, of conservative republicanism. Sometimes they have to come in hot, like they did when we first started. Other times they can work with leadership. If leadership in either chamber is wanting to move forward on good, solid Reagan to Trump Republican-esque ideas. I can prove that by simply telling you what the Missouri Freedom Caucus's Fantastic Five platform was this year. Now, as the director, some people are confused. I don't quote, run the Freedom Caucus. I'm their advisor. I'm their assistant. As someone who's been in and around the Missouri legislature for, I hate to say, I think over 2 decades now. They love the fact that I can tell the war stories and also share some of the institutional memory. So I'm their guide. I'm their rudder. But the men and women of the Freedom Caucus, they're the ones that decide what they're going to pursue every year, and I can give them my advice on that. But they put together a Fantastic Five agenda. It's posted at their Twitter feed. You can find the Missouri Freedom Caucus really easily, very transparent, at Mo Freedom Caucus on Twitter, Missouri Freedom Caucus on Facebook. The Fantastic Five platform is simply this: to make Missouri safe again, to make Missouri healthy again, to make Missouri secure again, free again, and affordable again. Borrowing from the America First Trump agenda, we thought that would be popular and catchy and kitschy, and it has definitely caught on. I'll give you some examples. Under Safe Again, working on issues of criminal and juvenile law reform. We talked about that, I know, on this station with Senator Nick Schroer, and that's his bill, the chairman of the Freedom Caucus, and he's moving it rather rapidly. I have to say, too, for a Freedom Caucus issue, it's probably one of the more bipartisan ones. It just took a Freedom Caucus member to be the person to spark it forward. Also talking a little AI regulation the right way, Second Amendment protections, and very popular item as well, banning Sharia law, another bill of Senator Nick Schroer's. Making Missouri healthy again. That is the number one platform priority of my state rep, my sister she likes me to call her my daughter from another mother, but then she points out that I'm actually not that much older than her. Make Missouri healthy again. That's Representative Holly Jones. This is her bailiwick. Dealing with issues of vaccine mandates and repealing those forever. Universal informed consent issues, clean air and water. I thought conservatives didn't want clean air and water. Holly Jones does. And removing poisons from our food, kind of the RFK agenda. Making Missouri secure again. That really revolves around electoral integrity. One person, one vote. Making it easy to vote and hard to cheat. Yes, we've done photo voter ID here, but we need to do more. We need to implement more of the Federal SAVE Act here on the local level, dealing with issues of ESG, DEI, and more. Free again, educational freedom, protecting children, passing the REINS Act. We've talked to people like Ben Keithley about the REINS Act. That is putting the legislature in charge instead of the bureaucracy, making Missouri affordable again. Yeah, the number one issue that Governor Kehoe brought forth, eliminating Missouri's income tax, doing real property tax reform, energy choice, and bringing the budget back to pre-pandemic levels. It's really gotten ridiculously uber bloated. That's Missouri Freedom Caucus's Fantastic Five. There's something in there for everybody, and I'm telling you, I'm really proud of the members for moving all of these definite priorities that people voted for. These are all things Republicans campaigned on, and very proud of the fact that the Freedom Caucus members are trying to make them reality. And that's the Speaker's stump speech for today. Big, busy agenda up there in Jefferson City, in addition to everything we talked about with gray machines and speed limits and so much more.
Very busy session so far.
It has been. It's interesting. It's good to see, especially in an election year. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversations with Raul Mas, former international banker turned marketing consultant and so much more. Newsmax contributor, joined us on our trip to Israel. We'll ask him what the Maduro ouster could mean for the future of the Castro regime in Cuba. All that and more on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show when we return. 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL.
Like and subscribe to us on Rumble. News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. Not as cold tonight. Low down to 31 degrees, and then a warmer day with a high of 47. Partly cloudy skies, a little breezy. Winds at 15 to 20, some gusts to 30 miles an hour, but staying dry and warmer for Friday. Saturday, mostly sunny and a cold one. We have a high of 36 degrees, but it's a split weekend. While it's cold Saturday, it's much warmer Sunday. Mostly sunny Sunday with a high of 53. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Free speech is alive and well in America.
Thanks for taking my call.
Right here.
You know what's going on?
Have our great awakening.
You see through the smoke screen.
It's cool to be woke.
News Talk STL.
Until it's not.
News, analysis, opinion.
Let me tell you about something I generally use. That's Royal Banks of Missouri's interactive teller machines, or ITMs. Think of them as a branch without the lobby. You pull up, and instead of just pushing buttons on an ATM, you're actually talking live with a real Royal Banks teller on video and audio. The same service you'd get inside just without getting out of your car. That's why I use them. They're quick, they're easy, and they're still personal. I can deposit or withdraw cash, make loan payments, cash checks, move money, and if I have a question, I'm talking to an actual human being, not a screen prompt. Here's the real advantage, the hours. Weekdays, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., Saturdays, 9 to 2, and if you don't live your life between 9 and 5, that matters. I've been with Royal Banks of Missouri for more than 20 years because they've always understood that convenience isn't a luxury, it's part of good service. 16 locations across St. Louis, St. Charles, Illinois, even up in Northeast Missouri. They're locally owned, independently run, and invested right here. Hey, you can learn more at royalbanksofmo.com, royalbanksofmo.com, Royal Banks of Missouri, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Hey, it's Susie Moore. If new flooring makes you think hassle, think again, because Michaels Flooring is changing the game. For over 30 years, Michaels has been locally owned and trusted for quality, variety, and amazing service. Whether it's carpet, hardwood, laminate, luxury vinyl, or ceramic tile, their expert team makes installing new floors exciting, not stressful. That's why customers keep coming back. Visit Michaels Flooring at St. Peter's, Starting Prairie, Creve Coeur, or online at igotfloored.com. That's igotfloored.com.
I've told you how Tom Shaw Realtors can help you buy, sell homes, farms, acreage. Listen to what Tom Shaw Realtors did in 2025. More than 100 properties sold, $52 million in sales. ShawRealtors.com.
The St. Louis County Insider with Councilman Mark Harder.
On this week's show, we have Steve O'Laughlin from Lodging Hospitality Management Company to talk about Westport and Union Station. We also have Elliot Davis. We're bringing Elliot Davis back this week to talk about the stories of his career.
The St. Louis County Insider with Councilman Mark Harder.
I'll talk to you Sunday night at 5, only on News Talk STL.
Hey, Jamie Allman here. When your car needs attention, trust who I trust. Benchmark Complete Auto in Valley Park. 25 years as a family-owned and operated company, Benchmark is your Napa Auto Care Center for nearly every maintenance and repair, using the latest technology and top-quality parts. Need help with the bill? Well, ask about Napa's Easy Pay financing. Mention Jamie Allman and News Talk STL and get 10% off. BenchmarkAutoRepair.com, BenchmarkAutoRepair.com.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
Now wait a minute.
It's the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
So I ask you, Secretary Benson, will you be the voice of reason in the administration and urge Trump to stop waging a war on American consumers and on housing or affordability and putting the economy at risk? Yes or no? You don't have to explain.
Representative
Will you be the voice? Will you be the voice? Will you be the voice? Will you be the voice of reason? Will you be the voice of reason?
A study
yes
from
no?
Wharton University
Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time.
The gentleman's time has expired.
No, my time has not expired.
Your time has expired. And the gentleman...
The gentleman took up my time. I think you should recognize that, Mr. Chair.
I think we all wished her term would expire and she'd go back home and play with the grandkids or something.
You ask a question, and then you won't let the person answer, and then you reclaim your time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you want to give a speech, then don't ask a question, right? Give your speech, use all your time for that, and then move on. Let's see what our next guest thinks about that and so much more, given his fantastic career in banking and finance and investment and business and so much more. He's a great friend of the show. Raul Mas, he journeyed with Chris and I all the way halfway around the planet to Israel earlier, midway last year, and he's back with us now to talk about all these topics and so much more. Raul, good afternoon. Welcome back to News Talk STL.
Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate being on with you guys again. Even though it's not in person. It was fun being in person with both of you guys. Hopefully we get to do it again real soon. Maybe in a free Cuba someday soon.
Yeah,
that would be, we'll let you take us down there anytime. That'd be great.
Oh, listen, man, we'll have some real Cuba Libres down there at that point.
Yeah, now you're
cigars.
Now you're talking our language. Yeah, Raul. As someone who's followed business nearly your entire adult life, what did you think about Secretary Bessent's testimony up there on Capitol Hill? I guess the Democrats just want to spin narratives, right? They don't want to hear about facts.
They do, man. And look, I think it's important to recognize that Scott Bessent is probably one of the smartest guys that we've seen. We've had a lot of great secretaries of the Treasury, but there's no question that Scott is definitely in a league of his own. This is a guy who has literally had a very, very distinguished, career on Wall Street, made gazillions of dollars, knows the economy inside and out. It's really, really hard to trip this guy up on just about anything related to the economy. And to think that Maxine Waters, of all people, is going to try and corner him is just kind of ludicrous, man. Really, I don't, what I've been seeing these last couple of weeks, couple of months is that, Trump derangement syndrome is absolutely 110% real. Okay. And before it was kind of like, limited to, I would say, a relatively small number of Democrats. But, man, it is spreading like wildfire, man. COVID-19 has nothing on TDS, man. It's really spreading like crazy. And I think that, the fact that Scott Bessent is pushing back is perfectly acceptable. Some people are alarmed that, we've lost civility, that, we don't have manners anymore. Well, guess what? The gloves have been off for a while, okay? I think Republicans are pushing back and pushing back strongly, as well they should, because, we're talking sometimes here not about, small issues. We're talking about very, very big, important, substantive issues where getting the facts, right is critical. Our economy's at stake, our national security is at stake. And now you've got guys that, in the past would have been much more moderate in their tone, but even Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, all these guys are now talking like, that lady with the green hair that comes out, out of left field every once in a while,
Raul, if you listen to the polls, they say that the president is losing support among Hispanics because of the illegal immigrant crackdown. I know that, the Hispanic community is not monolithic. They don't all vote the same, but you have your finger on the pulse of the Cuban community and there in Miami and in Florida. Is the president losing support among Cubans in Florida?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's losing support amongst Cubans, especially not now with, Cuba being on the verge of being liberated after, 60 plus years of being, communist hellhole. The same thing holds for Venezuelans, right? I mean, they're deliriously happy down here that they might finally be able to return to their country and start rebuilding, a beautiful country with incredible natural resources that has absolutely no reason to be in the gutter other than the fact that it was hijacked by, socialists, communists, whatever you want to call them, and ran that economy into the ground. So I think down here the mood is definitely, very different. I saw that probably that same article you saw this morning. I think it was in the Wall Street Journal or something saying, he might be losing ground in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I think it was one place where it was mentioned. And look, I understand, right? I mean, I think, the idea of American citizens getting shot, by police, always kind of, raises eyebrows, right? But I don't, on the other hand, I am completely adverse to the idea. And I think a lot of Hispanic Americans agree with me because, one of the things that, Hispanic Americans, generally speaking, are known for is, we assimilate quickly and we do, in fact, become law-abiding citizens. And we take, respect for police and respect for law and order very seriously. And I think, a lot of us are equally shocked at, seeing, cops being spit upon. I mean, come on, they're the fellow Pruitt, kicking out the taillights of that SUV. That's uncalled for, man. We don't see that down here in Florida. We certainly don't see it in South Florida. I mean, that kind of nonsense just does not happen down here because, luckily, we've got some pretty good folks in charge of the police departments down here. And, we got a very disciplined, field force that anytime we've got riots down here, they come on out and they restore order pretty quickly. And we haven't seen any of that stuff in Florida or in a lot of, red states. We haven't seen that level of disorder. And it's because, Governor Walz and the mayor of Minnesota have decided that, they're not going to let their police officers, support the federal officers. They're not going to open their jails so that we can, grab those prisoners that are those illegal immigrants that are there because they violated the law, because they've oftentimes committed violent crimes. They won't turn them over in the secure environment of a jail, as Mr. Homan mentioned, this afternoon, the day before as well. That's the problem. So you're right. The Hispanic Americans are not monolithic. I think there might be some people that are dismayed. You hear about, people are scared to go to the supermarket because their papers may not be in order. I get that. It's an unfortunate, side effect, but I don't think it is as widespread as people make it out to be.
Raul, you mentioned, you made reference to the connection between the ouster of Maduro in Venezuela and what could potentially happen in Cuba. I think our listeners may be surprised to hear about the nefarious kind of underground connections that were going on between Venezuela and Cuba. Could you further elaborate on that? What is the connection between those two countries?
A very strong one. I mean, basically, one of the reasons that you've had Chavez and Maduro in power for as long as they were is because they outsourced the security of their presidency to the Cuban security apparatus. Cuba's security apparatus was trained by perhaps the best of the Soviet era intelligence forces, which was the East Germans. In fact, there's a great movie out, The Lives of Others. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. The Stasi. Those are the guys that trained Fidel Castro's security people, and those are the people that have been helping to keep Chavez and Maduro in power for as long as they were. So, the Venezuelans paid for that security. They also employed a lot of Cuban doctors that would come to Venezuela to practice medicine. They were paid, back in Cuba, lousy wages, but the Venezuelan government, showered them with dollars. And by the way, Venezuela was selling 70,000 barrels a day of oil to Cuba. That has now disappeared. But those ties with Cuba and Venezuela have basically been tied at the hip in matters of security and economy, really for the past 25 years or so. It's been a very lucrative relationship for the Cubans in particular. Now that that party is over, they're looking at a very grim future unless they come to the table, and that is exactly what Miguel Diaz-Canel, the current leader of Cuba, dictator of Cuba, I should say, said. He basically came out this afternoon and in no uncertain terms said, we are willing to dialogue with the United States about any subject except for the sovereignty of our country. I mean, he had one little caveat in there, but he basically realizes, look, just the other day, they had the whole eastern end of the island was practically blacked out for hours on end. They no longer have those 70,000 barrels coming in from Venezuela. Mexico would ship them 20,000 barrels a day. That's now been cut off as well. And there was a story that came out about a ship that left Cuba to pick up liquefied natural gas in Jamaica. And it came back completely empty because, the tariffs from Trump went into effect right after the ship left. And there's photographs of the ship, in port. And you can see by the draft that, it was empty. And when it came back, it was still empty, right? So it wasn't able to pick up the liquefied natural gas. So you've got a country that doesn't have fuel for the electrical grid, doesn't have gas for the kitchens, okay, is basically bankrupt. And they're trying to figure out what to do. So, I think all of us down here in South Florida are expecting that, there will be changes. I think Marco Rubio is absolutely, and the president are absolutely in the driver's seat. And they're going to be calling the shots real soon in Cuba. And when that happens, Nicaragua's, might fall as well. And what you're seeing, Tim, Chris, really is not just Venezuela, not just Cuba. You're also seeing, in Costa Rica, they just elected a conservative, Catholic woman of faith as president. All throughout Latin America, you're seeing a lot of governments that are finally waking up to the fact that the socialism stuff never worked, okay? Unfortunately, big countries like Brazil are still, following that model. But Chile, threw off the chains of their leftist ideology in the last election. So you're seeing it not just in the Caribbean, but all throughout the continent, sort of a realization. I think now you'll see in Colombia, this nutcase that they have down there called Petrov is going to basically be replaced as well. And, you're seeing this sort of movement. You saw it in El Salvador, a couple of years ago, restoring sanity to a country that's been plagued with incredible crime and gang warfare for decades. So all throughout the continent, people are waking up and realizing, we got to find a different way of doing things, and socialism, communism simply doesn't work.
Raul, it is widely known that the Cuban exiles there in southern Florida, they love their home country of Cuba. And I've always wondered, if Cuba was ever liberated and became democratic, how many Cuban exiles would move back to Cuba, do you think?
Look, I don't know if, I came here when I was 3 years old, right? I mean, I am, for all practical purposes, dyed in the wool American through and through, right? I don't really have much, memory of what Cuba was even like because, I came here as a babe in arms. But I think, most people here in South Florida, and including myself, now I'm kind of getting up there in years and stuff. But I think, we may not necessarily move back, but boy, I would love to go back because I've never really been in Cuba with the exception of 2 short visits to Guantanamo, visiting the prisoners there, courtesy of the Department of Defense. But I've never really been in Cuba. And I would love to go back and see the land where my parents were born, my grandparents were born, see everything they used to talk to me about as a child. And yes, to help rebuild the country. There is an enormous amount of wealth concentrated in the Cuban exile community in the United States. I mean, my late brother left a company to his sons. That company today, it's called Mostec. It is a Fortune 500 company. It has a market value of $20 billion, employs over 20,000 employees. My nephews also own the soccer franchise down here with a fellow named Lionel Messi that apparently is very, very popular. And so that's one example. I mean, that's in my own immediate family. And my family is, one of dozens of families down here that have, found incredible success. Thanks to what? Thanks to freedom, thanks to democracy, thanks to capitalism, thanks to the open arms of a country that, welcomed us, when we were fleeing communism. This is the greatest country on earth. I mean, I've had the privilege in my life, traveling as a banker, again, a great career that I would never have had my family had stayed in Cuba. I probably would have been making $30 a month and, shoveling, manure someplace, right? Instead, I had the opportunity to go to an Ivy League school, go to work for firms like Chase, Goldman Sachs, travel the world. And having seen most of the world, I can tell you, man, there's no place I'd rather be than the U.S. of A. This is, I am Cuban by birth, but I am an American by the grace of God. And I will say that till my last breath, man. I mean, this is just the greatest country on earth. We down here in South Florida, the Cuban American community, the Venezuelan community, most of the Latin Americans down here in Miami understand that very clearly. They're grateful for it. And if given the opportunity, we will rebuild Cuba, and we will rebuild it with very little foreign assistance, if any, in record time. And we'll be enjoying those Cuba Libres down in a real free Cuba in the not too distant future.
Tim,
fantastic.
Let's hold Raul over because we got to talk about Israel and come back. Can you hold on, Raul?
Can you hang on, Raul?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
We'll continue our conversation with Raul Mas. We'll touch a little bit on Israel when we return to wrap up the show. Stay right here. Got lots more straight ahead on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton. Not as cold tonight, low down to 31 degrees, and then a warmer day with a high of 47. Partly cloudy skies, a little breezy. Winds at 15 to 20, some gusts to 30 miles an hour, but staying dry and warmer for Friday. Saturday, mostly sunny and a cold one. We have a high of 36 degrees, but it's a split weekend. While it's cold Saturday, it's much warmer Sunday. Mostly sunny Sunday with a high of 53. That's the latest from the First Alert 4 Weather Center. I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Country Mart's massive meat sale this Thursday and Friday, February 5th and 6th. A sale so big we could only call it a massive meat sale. Premium sliced bacon, $3.49 a pound. Boneless ribeyes, $8.99 a pound. Baby back pork ribs, $2.99 a pound. Boneless pork loins, $1.89 a pound. Boneless beef tenderloins, $12.99 a pound. Visit our Facebook page to see everything. St. Clair Country Mart on Plaza Drive in St. Clair. Hurry while supplies last. Sorry, no rain checks.
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Money Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on the St. Louis radio airways for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. You can now hear Doug and Safe Money Radio 2 times every weekend on News Talk STL. But in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeMoneyRadio.com. You could also reach Doug at 844-676-SAFE. That's 844-676-7233.
Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities, LLLP, member FINRA and SIPC.
As you know, Vincent's is not just my favorite jeweler. Vincent's is my only jeweler. And I was in recently looking at lab-grown diamonds. These are not glass. They are actual diamonds, but they cost a fraction of a natural diamond. You can check them out at Vincents.com, or better yet, see these lab-grown diamonds in person. You're going to be amazed at the beauty and the price. Vincent's Jewelers, VincentsJewelers.com.
It's the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
It's Jim Crow 2.0. And I called it Jim Crow 2.0, and the right wing went nuts all over the internet. That's because they know it's true. What they're trying to do here is the same thing that was done in the South for decades to prevent people of color from voting.
5:49 on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, and I can say personally that I have no trouble obtaining an ID or how to get an ID.
You do?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Wow.
We're speaking with Raul Mas. He is a former international banker, and he traveled with us to Israel. I want to get his thoughts on that. But before we get to that, Raul, I want to ask you this. You know, African Americans vote overwhelmingly Democratic. The majority of Hispanic population, that has shifted over the last couple of elections, have voted Democratic. But Cuban Americans have been a outlier to that. They vote overwhelmingly Republican. Why is that?
Well, there's actually a very specific reason for that, and it's a guy by the name of John F. Kennedy. You'll recall that back in the early 60s, it actually started in the Eisenhower administration. JFK kind of inherited a plan to overthrow Fidel Castro and trained, several thousand Cuban exiles in Nicaragua that were then landed on the southern shore of Cuba in an amphibious assault to try and oust Fidel Castro. But one of the main reasons why the invasion failed, or at least, some historians attribute it to this particular fact, is that air support that had been promised by JFK to the troops that were, landed on the beaches did not materialize. And some people, some historians say he got cold feet. Others say that it really was never promised, et cetera, but a lot of Cuban Americans back in the 60s sort of saw that, and it was a wake-up call that, really, I think, soured a lot of older generation Cubans on Democrats in general, because, you remember JFK was a Democrat. And so that I think is where it began, quite frankly. It began with the quote betrayal at the Bay of Pigs, and it's changed in recent years because we've got a new generation of Cuban Americans that have grown up here in America. They never been in Cuba. They have no affiliation with the island, and they certainly don't. They may not even know what the Bay of Pigs is all about. But that's kind of where it started.
Raul, we cover everything from the international to the local here at News Talk STL. And, of course, Chris and I have regaled our audience with a lot of the information and stories that we heard and learned on our trip to Israel. We have a couple of foreign policy experts on every week as well. And so we're following things very closely in the Middle East. How amazed are you at everything that has changed just since we were there, barely 6 months ago? We have this uneasy, but we do have a peace in the Middle East of sorts. Your thoughts and comments on the future of the Middle East, and similarly, what that could mean for the world.
Yeah, when we were there, you'll recall. The hostages. There were still, I think, 90 or 100 plus hostages still being held in Gaza. There really was no understanding of when they would be released. The menace of Iran was kind of still hanging in the air. We had, if you recall, we had our trip postponed because of the exchange of missiles between Iran and Israel. And boy, who would have thought that in such a short period of time, the United States would knock out the nuclear facilities of the Ayatollah, which, my God, I mean, I'm so grateful for that because, Tim, I mean, I my entire life, and I'm 68 years old right now, has been, I've lived my life under this fear of sort of global terrorism. My entire lifetime has been, ever since the hostages in Iran and all that stuff, and Khomeini coming into power, the world has been filled with bloodshed and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Red Army and all these terrorist groups and Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian, the PLO, and all this stuff. And man, one of the biggest financiers of a lot of that terrorism has been Iran. Yes. Unquestionably, they're the banker, right? And to see that they are now, greatly diminished and possibly now even facing extinction and regime change, I think is good for all of humanity. I think it's great for the United States. I think it's great for the world. If we can get rid of the scourge of terrorism, that's exactly what it is. It's a scourge, the world is going to be a much better place, We still got to deal with sort of, Satan's emissary on earth named Vladimir Putin, but that's another matter.
Yes.
Raul, we've got just a couple of minutes left. I want to ask you about our trip to Israel. We were able to visit sacred religious sites. We visited with the Israeli president. We went to the Knesset. We visited the site of the music massacre. Was there one thing on our trip that stood out to you the most?
Listen, I mean, no question about it. I mean, going there to the site of the October 7th killings, just really sort of, was I mean, you had read about it, you had heard it, you had seen the videos, but being there and walking through those, that village and seeing the destruction that was caused and hearing from people that were there that day exactly what happened and the horrific events, and then going to the Nova Music Festival. I had seen an exhibit here in South Florida about the Nova Music Festival that brought over, a lot of the shot-up porta potties and all that stuff. But boy, to go there and see literally hundreds and hundreds of posters with the images of all those young men and women that were killed that day was just really, gut-wrenching. And then on top of that, while we were there, if you recall, the lady who was, the sister of one of those that was killed, recounting to us her story. And then all of a sudden, we hear the outgoing artillery barrage coming from the Israeli side. I mean, boy, that was pretty memorable, right? I mean, but look, I mean, also for me, just sort of seeing, Israel, a democracy, in the middle of all this turmoil. Here's a country that has built an incredible economy, incredible technological advances. And you and I were pretty much able to walk freely throughout the streets. We went into the old quarter, felt relatively secure. Most of the time we were there, I never felt threatened for a minute, right? And seeing, people of meeting with the Druze community, meeting with, Israeli Arabs. I mean, it's the only place in the Middle East where everybody, can seem to get along. Happens to be right inside of Israel. That's where the Arabs and the Druze and everybody else gets along.
And that is Raul Mas, former international banker, frequent Newsmax guest, and he accompanies to Israel. Raul, it's been so great to talk to you again, my friend. I hope that we can see you again in person one day. Have a great weekend, and we hope to talk to you again.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Chris, for this opportunity.
Thanks, Raul. Yeah. Cuba Libre.
Cuba Libre. I like that. Boy, I'd like to go to Cuba and get me some
Raul.
cigars. And
yeah,
and get some cigars, too.
Yeah.
All right. The story behind the story on Larry Connors USA. Marvin Zindler, the Texas reporter and consumer lawman who was known for his poor taste in fashion. Larry will give you all the details coming up. You've been listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL. Drive safe and have a great evening.
Remember those
those magical moments in Mom's kitchen? The heavenly aroma of fresh baked cookies? At Trolley Stop Bakery in Chesterfield's Forum Shopping Center, our co-op of talented bakers has been perfecting that homemade magic for 4 decades. From the gooeyest cookies in town to custom pies, cobblers, and cakes, everything's made from scratch, just like Mom and Grandma's recipes. Need that perfect corporate gift? We ship our